Greetings and hallucinations. Welcome to Spun Together. My name is Buddy, and this is my podcast about some of the arts and crafts I do to keep my sanity. I'll be going over a little bit of knitting, crochet, sewing, quilting, painting. I think that's it. That's about it. I did write notes this time, so hopefully I'll stay on track. I am not a giveaway channel. It's just a podcast of show and tell, ramblings of a madman, and anything that comes to mind that I decide to voice my opinion on. So let's just go ahead and get on with what I've done this past few days. As you can see, I finished my cardigan. It's oversized, it's comfy, it's got pockets. I did not add buttons. I'm not one to button them, so I just left the buttons out. The sleeves are a little big on the end, but most of the time I keep them pushed up out of the way. I did leave a tick mark so I'd know where to go back to if I decide to tink back and make them a little more narrow, and I did not weave the ends in on the bottom of the sleeves, so they're just hanging out for test run, see how I like it, what's going on, and maybe I'll take it in, maybe I won't. For this I used a pound of love, the colorway of charcoal. I got 2 skeins. I had this much left. So it's, I'm going to say about a skein and a half, so a pound and a half, maybe a little more. It's fairly quick knit. I did use size US 8, which is a 5mm. And for this, I used Knit Picks Options, and the Options is a nickel plated needle. They were my first interchangeable set. I've had them for quite a long time. I really enjoy them. The ends, they're not really rounded, but they do have a good taper to them. For bulkier knits, they work perfect for me. They're not sharp enough to cut through the yarn. And I won a giveaway, so I got a small set of Chalgoo, and they are not really a comparison between the two. The Chalgoo has the lace point. It's sharper, tapered, it's pointier. The Knit Picks, it's sort of like the old boy knitting needles, the aluminum straights that everyone had. That's what I learned on. Back before I was a teenager, I learned how to knit. So that's what I was used to. I had some very cheap circulars. I think they were like 47-inch circulars. And the ends on those were just horrid. Some of them would have a really blunt, rounded end. Some of them would have a slight taper. And so I did a little shopping around. I got a couple of Try Me sets and decided that the Knit Picks is the ones that I like the best. I knew I didn't want wood. The only thing I like the wooden needles for is if I'm using cotton. And between the wood needles and the cotton, it has just enough grip so that you don't have to worry about the cotton sliding off. You can tighten it up, you can loosen it up, and to me, they work better with cotton. And that's my opinion for me. Your opinion may vary. You just have to try what you feel is right for you. And if it works, and stay with it. My next finished object, I finished my socks. I do have a pair. These, I put the Forethought heel in. They have been sort of blocked. I wanted to put them through just like I was going to wash them. So they've been blocked and put through the dryer. I did 80 rows from the heel to where I'd start the toe and 68 stitches. They did not draw in as much as I was hoping. I was hoping not for them to felt, but for them to just tighten up to wear as house socks, because cold weather is here. My heating bill is going to be the proof. But I was hoping that they would just snug up, just enough to, you couldn't really feel the knit, but it would almost felt. And the next ones I do, I think I'm going to go back to my standard 64 and to ensure that I can put them in the dryer and get that draw up. I'll either go back to my 70 rows or maybe even up to 75, because that's my sweet point, is between the two, depending on, how thick the yarn is and how it knits up. But I think it's because it's a super wash, so I'm just going to go ahead and stay with the recipe that's tried and true for me. The contrast heel and toe, I used, I doubt if you can see it, it's a really deep plum. It was some scraps that I had left over. I had two about 25 gram pieces of, I think it was a Patton's Croy. So I was playing around with dyes, and I wanted something deep, dark, and purple is one of my favorite colors. And actually you can tell. So I dyed it a plum or eggplant. I can't remember which it was called. It took the dye not very well. I had to add a lot of acid to it. I had to cook it a long time, and I still had a lot of bleed out. I don't know if that was because I was doing an over dye, the type of dye, or if I just had too much in the pot for the yarn to absorb. But I had this much left out of one, about 25 gram, and I still have the other 25 grams, so I'm pretty sure I can get another set of socks using those, at least the heels and toes, and possibly the cuffs, because I do like my shorties. The main body of the sock is this right here, and this is what I had left. This is Hawthorne in the Lintz colorway. I enjoy keeping some kind of band with it, even when it gets very small. And if it's one that I've dyed myself, then I will still keep the band where it came in as a bare wool, and I'll just write down what I'm calling the color. I'm not a professional indie dyer or anything. I just, about once or twice a year, I enjoy doing a couple of rounds, and I'll have an idea in my head of something I want to try and see how the colors work together, or I'm doing it for a project in mind that I'm going to try to get the color that I'm thinking up here, and I want to see it in front of me. That's a hit and miss with me. Excuse me. Yeah, even though it's already frosted and the weather has changed drastically, autumn allergies are still full effect. I was going through my bin. It's sort of my stash, sort of my scraps. It's a little bit of everything together. I'm not one to have a huge stash. It's mostly just one tote's worth, one of the larger totes. That's where I house my pattern book, as well as all my yarns and even my scrap yarns. When the scrap yarns get to a certain point, I go through and try to think of a project to do with them. I'd made some placemats using the Hipster cotton and the colorway Rainbow roller skates. I don't know if it'll focus. Anyway, trust me, rainbow roller skates. So I had maybe 30 grams left, something like that. And I decided, instead of using so many paper towels, I've used cross between napkin, tea towel, anywhere between that size as paper towels for the past few years. Well, they're running thin, they're running low. So I decided to make just a couple of kitchen towels. This is what I had left. All it is just simple stockinette stitch with the seed border around it. I had a couple of the skeins left from the placemats, so I had 2 kitchen towels. And what I do is, when they're about this size, I'll just lay them on top of the paper towel roll, and that way they're easy to just grab, and if I need a paper towel, then I can just lift them up and pull one out from under. I cast on 50 stitches, did my seed stitch, put a 5-stitch seed on each end. I measured out the last 12 yards on this one, 15 on this one, and I had this much left, so I went with 12 on this one so that I would have enough to do the seed stitch on the other end, and I just stockinette in between. And what I got, they're just going to be for quick cleanups. If I need to wipe something down, if I need to dry my hands, whatever, they're right there handy. They've not been washed yet, so they're still have that new yarn feel. The cotton, but Hipster is a sort of a softer cotton. It's more like Premier's cotton that you would use for dishcloths or washcloths, and nothing like Peaches and Cream, which is a very rough cotton. Some people like it. I don't mind working with it. It's like when they changed companies, they changed something about the way they would wash their yarn or process it, but it's a lot rougher, especially if it's like a speckle or a variegated. It's rougher on the hands to work with. The older ones I didn't mind as much. It was like it didn't have all the sizing in it. But I've always made dishcloths for as long as I can remember. It's one of the things I do. I'll make a stack, take it to my mother the last visit of the year. Whoever wants one through the holidays, it's there. If she wants to give them out to anyone that shows up, they're on the table. All she has to do is say, take one on your way out. So that's just quick and easy, keeps me busy, mindless. Oh, and last time I talked about my boomerang shawl that I liked so well, the pattern and everything that I fell in love with. It's just the plain and simple garter with the increase on the eyelets. I found that pattern, and the pattern is a Drops Design Solar Flare. And as you can see, I put in the corner, I like this one. And it's a paid for pattern, so I can't say anything. I mean, not a paid for, it's a free pattern, but it's the designer's pattern, so I'm not going to give a lot away about it. But if you like to do shawls, at least investigate the pattern for the way that she has you do the bind off, because it is a very stretchy bind off. Just the way that she has you to add that little extra chain every so often. Did I mention that about the Cardi, the pattern name, the Dream Cardi? Yeah, it was also a free pattern from Cascade Yarns, and I love to support pattern designers, but if it's something I can find that I really like and it's free, it's going to be downloaded so that I'll have it. Because, I mean, even if I just, like I did with this pattern, I'd made a couple here and there going strictly by the pattern. And then I decided I'm going to make it my own, and I started building off of what the designer had done. Just like, the yoke here, I started right in here, and I went up on both fronts and joined them using short rows here, and then I cast on the back of the neck and went down to the same spot on the back, and then I just had my joining stitches here so I can knit the whole thing flat, as opposed to having 3 separate pieces. The designer on the pattern has you knit the sleeve and then stitch it in here. Well, I picked up here and knit down. But I'd made the pattern a couple times. I knew the construction. I knew I liked it. You can make it fitted. I prefer oversized. I really enjoyed doing the pockets. She walks you through the pockets very well. And I just enjoyed it. Couple of other things that I've been doing. Let me see. I'm going to try to get this down. The kitchen towels, I used a US size 6, 4 millimeter, and this was from a Knitter's Pride Try Me set. It came with 3 needles in it. One of them was a wooden square, and I did not care for the square. The other was chrome plated. I did not care for the chrome plate, even though I like the nickel plated on my knit picks. I did not like the chrome plating on the Knitter's Pride, which they should be basically the same thing, but it had a different feel. So I'm glad I have my knit picks. If you're a Stephen West follower, it's the same type of needles he used last year. Not in this past MCAL, but the one before it. A couple of other things I've been up to. I got my brushes out, got my paints wet, and I was just playing around. Just a little something to say, let's see what's going on in the world. I just wet everything down, started adding color, just threw my favorite colors on there. As you can see, I've got my purples, I've got the blues, you can barely see the green in the back, and in Payne's Gray. I do like my grays, especially the darker grays. And it's just modeled together, and then the way everything, while it was wet, I would tap it this side, then tap it this side. I would blotch a little bit of different colors on top of it. And then I thought, okay, it looks sort of like a night sky, so let's just add the night trees in. That's also one of my standbys that I go to. Let's see, 2 other things I've been working on. This one, I'm testing for myself, something that I want to work on. I am using Wool-like. It's a Loops and Threads yarn. The colorway is charcoal, so they're nothing alike. This is a number 1, and well, maybe it'll focus, but it's a number 1 weight. They're suggesting a 3.5 millimeter. I have made socks with this, and I used a 2 millimeter on the socks because it is finer. The specs on it, let's see, I just had it in front of me. 85 acrylic, 15 nylon. You've got the durability of the acrylic, and you've got that smooth spider web feel for the nylon. It's not a good term, is it? So here's what I've been working on. I started with pinhole cast on, and there's my pinhole cast on. And I just wanted to do something in the round with a spiral. So every other row I'm adding a yarn over, and then I wanted to see how it was going to do if I put a little bit of lace work in it. So what I'm doing is I'm testing this for a future project that I'm debating on. In my head, it looks fairly good. Reality, I want to see how it's going to knit up, because what I'm planning on making is a large afghan, and that's going to be using a worsted weight, which is a weight of 4, and larger needles, probably around a US 10 or a 6 millimeter. So I want to try it on something small and manageable, see how it does, and see if I'm going to like it. I am probably a third of the way through the skein, so I'm going to add another row of the lace. I want to see how different patterns are going to work up. So I've got a break point right here. That's going to give me another point to add another row of some type of lace work. It may be very similar. It may be something totally different. I haven't gotten there yet. But I did want to incorporate something like this in the large one. So it's easier to just try it on something small than go ahead and start a large project and have to frog the whole thing because you don't like the way it's turning out. One more thing I've been working on lately, and I am not good at this by any means. I've done it for ages, off and on, mostly off. But I do know the concept, I know the results. It's just a matter of trying to perfect it. I've done a little bit of spinning. I broke my other spindle, so this one's just a homemade, an old wooden spool from my antique jar, chopstick, drilled a small hole, put the hook that was in my old spindle on it, and it works pretty good. Mobility and everything, I've found that if I use this more like a supported spindle, I can do pretty well with it. Otherwise, I do a lot of park and draft or leaning to the side, and I have only so much that I can work with at a time. But it's got a lot of slubs in it. Most of it did okay. It's not perfect by any means. A lot of fuzz. But I needed this in these two contrasting colors for a reason. And I will give you a hint about that reason. Any guesses? Someone had asked me if I would do a painting, just me painting. I told them I don't do tutorials. And there's like, no, you don't even have to say anything. I just like to watch you paint. So I thought I need a logo. On the YouTube channel, I have some of my homespun that I'd used for it, along with a couple of brushes, some paints, I think maybe crochet hook, knitting needles, or something along that line, just gathered together for the logo picture. And no, that was the banner picture. The logo is the spinning, just the spindle with some of the rainbow that I'd spun. It did turn out fairly decent. And I thought, this is, will give me the contrast. It's not the colors that I'm going to use, but it'll give me, just the shape that I'm looking for and the contrast, so I can tell which how the colors were going to play. The one thing I will say about this, the green, I don't know if you can tell, the green right there, that is some felting roving. I do not recommend trying to spin with it unless you really want to fight what you're working with. It has a lot of slubs in it. It had a lot of nibs in it. It's very rough. The white, on the other hand, is some Heinz 57, which is just a mix of different sheep's wool that's just been carded and turned into roving, ready to go. There's no specific breed. It's just a mixed breed. Thus the name Heinz 57. If you're not in the States, that's just something we call like a mutt would be a breed of, all different types of dogs. And they're just a Heinz 57, a little bit of everything coming in together. Most of us here in the States are Heinz 57, unless, our parents came over from a certain country and their parents had always lived there. Because, I'm got German and English, Scottish, Greek, and I think Irish is in there. So we're all just a mix, and that's what the white is on here. It's just a mixed breed. Other than that, I have no accusations, but let me know if you would like to see me do a painting. Most likely, if I do, I will just be talking about what I'm doing, or maybe why I'm doing what it is. I'm not going to be saying this is how you do it, this is the only way to do it, and if you do it any other way, it's wrong. There are many techniques. Some people will go strictly Eastern, some will go European, some will go loose, some tight, some will have the whole thing picture perfect, some will have everything loose, and each and every artist will say their way is the right way. So I'll just say, I'm mixing this color, here's where I'm going to add highlights or leave highlights, here's where I'm going to add lowlights, this needs a little more contrast, this needs to dry, something like that. And I'll just be showing the paper and the brush and mixing the paint and getting it ready. So if you'd like to see that, just leave a comment. If there's anything else that you'd like for me to talk about, show and tell, see me work on, please leave a comment, let me know, within reason. Like I said, it's not going to be a tutorial. I'm not a giveaway channel. My email is spuntogethercrafts@gmail.com. It's spuntogethercrafts@gmail.com, and just say whatever you're up to. What have you been working on? Leave it in the comments below. Send me an email. I can be very friendly. If you're not friendly with me, then we'll go from there. But if you're friendly with me, we'll talk. I do not have a P.O. box. Right now, my channel is still so new that I couldn't justify it, even if they did have an opening at the post office, which right now all their boxes are full. They're all taken. So I still have to get the yarn for my mother's sweater. I may go ahead and purchase what I need for the Afghan. I'm not sure yet. But I do want to get her sweater started, because I've got everything of mine finished, and I'm finding small projects to work on at the moment. So that means I should have hers on the needle, and I should have already had it cast on. So that will hopefully be an acquisition and a cast on for the next podcast. I think that's all. Would anyone be interested in seeing like what I would call the tools of the trade, like my needles and hooks, some of my paints and brushes, just anything like that? The sewing area, I've drastically cut back on the sewing area. I sold my quilting machine a few years ago, so I'm down to, I kept my smaller machine that I really like. It was between that one and the one size up, and I thought, well, the one that I'm going to keep, it's close enough to a featherweight. It's small. Let's see, I've got my great-grandmother's treadle, which I think I may have told you about last time. If not, I painted my grandmother's house, inside, outside, every room, pulled everything out, painted, scrubbed it down, clean, and you do not take money from your grandmother. So she is like, if you want this machine, because she had a back porch. It was not really fenced in, but a built-in back porch. It had the deep freeze and a couple of cabinets. She's like, do you want the machine? I was like, yes. She's like, you can have it for helping me. So I graciously accepted. I have an older singer that one of my neighbors, when she passed away, the family said that I was the only one they knew of that could sew. Would I be interested in it? And I sort of said yes, and then next thing I knew, it was on my doorstep. So I'm thankful for that. It's a Singer, I think it's 403. It's either 403 or 401. And it's in a cabinet. Actually, my old fish tank that's now a curio cabinet is setting on it. I will not put fish in the tank on top of that machine for several reasons. First of all, it has the real narrow legs, that just real narrow at the bottom, and I'm not going to risk breaking it. Secondly, that's a machine and a well-finished cabinet that I don't want to mess up. And I think that should be about it. Leave me a comment what you're working on, what you want to do, what you've just finished. If you have plans to do something that you've never done before, I think that would be wonderful for all of us. Have you ever been in a knit-along? Was it a mystery knit-along? I've never done a mystery knit-along. A couple of years ago, I did do the Crazy Sock Ladies sock camp, and I enjoyed it. I stretched myself. I went from DPNs, and I got some 9-inch circulars. I really enjoyed them. I really did. This year, my hands are not letting me work with them. That's why I've been using the 224-inch. I do not like magic loop. Something about that loop to me is not the good kind of magic. So I prefer the two, have one in the back, one in the front, and I can just drop instead of worrying about the loop twisting, I can just drop one and just keep going around and around and turn as I need. And other than that, it's trying to stay warm, and a long day ended by going to the grocery store and still have groceries to put away. But at least I have my pantry full, and I'm thankful for that. So let me know what you're doing, what you'd like to see, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. Blessings.